Hey, everybody. I'm so excited. We've got a great show here, and we just finished this fantastic campaign. I want to say thank you to all of you who purchased books from the tax refund Kindle cross promotion campaign. We'll be at it again. We'll do it again in July and in November. And if you're an author, or maybe you will be one soon, you could join. You could get into the action by going to bizkindlepromo.com. And we'd love to have you join the waitlist. And I'll tell you when we start the campaign again next time. Without any further delay, let me tell you about this show. What if your book isn't the finish line, but the starting point? Publishing isn't just about sharing your ideas, it's about unlocking new opportunities for your business, brand, and network. Your book can lead to speaking gigs, consulting offers, and powerful connections, but only if you approach it with strategy. Every reader is a potential client or collaborator. Every event is a chance to position yourself as a thought leader. The key is staying open to what's possible. I've helped authors turn their books into business assets that generate real momentum. That's why I offer book launch support focused on what happens after you publish. If you're curious about what doors your book could open, let's talk. You can book a 30-minute brainstorming session at booklaunchbrainstorm.com. Now, let's welcome our panelists who will share how their books have led them to exciting and unforeseen opportunities. Berthiaume co-wrote Do Not Write a Book Until You Read This One, the only guide you need to pen, publish, and profit from your nonfiction book. A no-nonsense, empowering guide that helps aspiring nonfiction authors navigate the publishing process with confidence. Cornelia Kawann wrote Change Your Energy, Change Your Life, an empowering guide that combines science, practical exercises, and transformational insights to help you unlock your energy, embrace new opportunities, and create a more fulfilling, impactful life. Stephanie McAuliffe wrote The Impact of Silence, Reclaim the Sovereignty of Your Soul, a powerful exploration of how unspoken trauma shapes our lives and how reclaiming our voice can lead to profound healing and personal freedom. Please join me in welcoming Ali, Cornelia, and Stephanie. Welcome all. Ali, I'm going to kick things off with you. I'd love to know a little bit about who you wrote this book for.
So this book is particularly for the aspiring nonfiction author who is interested in publishing independently.
Awesome. And you and I, we have so much to talk about. I've been talking to Bridget, your co-author, about this quite a bit. We have a lot of overlap in the kind of authors we work with, and they're also the ones who are listening in on this show right now. So they'll stay tuned because they want to hear all your tips. Cornelia, I'd love to hear a little bit about who you had in mind when you're writing this book.
Sure. These are, people that are tired of being tired, and they really want to have all the energy that they can make a difference in the world and live the life they are actually here for.
I appreciate your book so much. I remember when I was reading it and talking about it with my wife, trying the exercises. So we'll come back to all of that in a moment. And Stephanie, tell us a little bit about your book.
This book was written for the person who has done everything they thought they were supposed to do and is at a point in their life where it just doesn't feel satisfying anymore.
Ooh, that's deep. All right. So of the three of you, I know Ali has written another book. Stephanie, is this your first book? Second book. Okay. And Cornelia, this is your first book. All right. We're going to go to Cornelia for this question then, and I'll come back to Ali and Stephanie in a moment. I'm curious, Cornelia, how did you move past the inner voice? When you go to write a book the first time, there's like a lot of messages in our head. So what helped you motivate to write a book for the first time, and what mentally may have been like slightly holding you back that you had to overcome?
Oh, that's a very good question, because I think, it was a journey, and my book actually taught me a lot. And it's exactly what you said. It's all these mindset that kind of just pop up, and who am I to write a book? Nobody's going to read it. I'm quite sure many writers have had this voice in their head. And for me, it was in a way, all these thoughts and also these beliefs, they are just frequencies. And in the book, in a way, I show people how they can deal with these beliefs and these with their voice in their head, right? In a way, if you look into deeper and find out what's the real cause behind this voice or behind these thoughts or these beliefs, and then you remove that or dissolve that, and then all of a sudden it's so much clearer. And it really, I had a lot of blocks at the beginning. Like the first 3 months, I didn't tell anybody. I was so scared. I didn't even tell my family. They were just wondering, what is she writing all the time? But so maybe she's very busy for a project. But and after 3 months, when I removed all these blocks, all of a sudden I thought, now I need to share with the world that I'm writing a book. So it was really a transformation. And it was also with the publishing part. So it was really a journey, removing more and more of these blocks. And I just got a very nice review from another author. And she said, I had to read your book so I could write mine. And that was such a beautiful review.
Wow, Cornelia, I love that the book writing process was itself healing and helping you remove those blocks and create like the energy for you to want to shout from the rooftops about your content. And I do think the writing of a book can be really transformative for the author. And it's everything from healing past wounds, but also, or just even facing past conflict and challenges, but also defining the work that we want to be known for, which in itself is a big project. So, Stephanie, tell us a little bit about your journey for your first book and what was different about how you approached the second one.
So my first book, the title is The Message in the Bottle, Finding Hope and Peace Amidst the Chaos of Living with an Alcoholic. And that book, like Cornelia, took me on a journey of really beginning to find my voice. I ended a 27-year career on Wall Street. I was all of a sudden with all of this space. Like, what do I want to do when I grow up? And it was looking at the family patterns that go multiple generations back and writing this as an offering to others who have grown up around active or functional alcoholism.
Mm.
The second book, this is actually the second edition of The Impact of Silence. The first was published 3 years ago, and it took me through my journey of healing breast cancer. So I wrote a little bit. I needed to put it on hold while I focused on myself, and then came back. And in it are a lot of the tools and practices that I used for my own healing journey. As I traveled for 8 months in 2019, and it was last fall that this book told me it wanted a new voice. So it was rewritten. I worked with a friend who's an editor, and it's a very different, much more powerful, because my voice has become more activated, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Stephanie and Cornelia, it always happens. Like, the reason you're both on this panel is based on your availability, right? It wasn't like I did a lot of matchmaking, but it happens all the time that there'll be at least two authors on a panel who will find some kinship in something they're writing about or how they speak about it or their like view of the world. And I feel like both of you are vibrating on the same kind of frequency and healing journey and wanting to share a message to the world, right? Like being really motivated to not keep something to yourself, but also knowing the process of telling that story is for yourself. It's not just for everybody else. I'm going to come over to Allie, because Allie, I know a little bit about the second book that you did with Bridget. I had a chance to read the book. I really enjoyed it. And now I'm curious about the first book. Was that always a lifelong dream of yours to be a writer? And were you already in the publishing space, or is this kind of how you ended up in that space?
Oh gosh, that's a loaded question, and I'm not sure if I have a short answer, but I'm going to try.
Okay.
So my first book, Dear Universe, I Get It Now, Letters on the Art and Journey of Being Brave and Being Me, is actually a memoir. So still in the nonfiction space, but it crafted in a very different way than a nonfiction book such as Do Not Write a Book Until You Read This One. So truth be told, I've been writing since I was 5. I knew at the young age then that I wanted to grow up to be a writer. I didn't know what that meant other than having my name on the cover of a book. But I went on, I got my undergraduate degree in writing. I got my graduate degree in writing. And then after that graduate degree, it was figuring out how to get a job where those degrees transferred in the small state of Vermont, where there's not really a big publishing scene per se. So several different kind of jobs until I went out on the entrepreneurial path. And once I made that leap, I knew what I wanted to do. I knew who I wanted to work with. I knew what types of stories I wanted to help people tell. But I also recognized that there was some proof missing for those potential clients, which was that I could do it for myself in order to prove that I could do it for them. And so that was really the impetus for Dear Universe, was let's show people what I'm capable of. Let's show them what I've got. Let's do this for myself. Let's learn some other modes of publishing than the ones that I was taught in my traditional school programs. And let's get that first book out there and do the hard thing of telling your own story so that you can model for others the power of activating their own voices and honoring their own experiences and truths. And that first book gave me the confidence to then walk into partnership with Bridget and pen this next one. And at that point, I had a few years under my belt. I had my own way of working with clients and authors. And so it actually felt easier for me to feel really good and have strong conviction about what I was capable of writing with Bridget for this second book, because of everything that I had learned from the first book and all of the work with the clients that I had done in that time frame.
I love, Allie, is that I just said that, Cornelia and Stephanie had this sort of connection, and then you start describing your first book and your process of going through your first book. And I'm like, yeah, it's all resonating right here, isn't it? I also, this piece about you doing it for yourself to show future clients that you can do it. I mean, I didn't set out to be a book launch strategist. I had a message around in-person networking that I was speaking about and teaching, and I as a professional speaker, needed a book, quote unquote. So I went about doing that, but I'm not a writer. I am working on my fourth book, but I don't identify as a writer. Unlike Allie, I was not 5 years old imagining my name on a cover of a book. And so I got really excited about hey, this is a good book. I want people to know about it. Like, I got into the marketing and the launching piece of it. And after having 3 successful launches with a focus on reviews in particular and the building the pipeline, found myself suddenly in that role. So I feel like you earn your way into these roles sometimes through lived experience and people kind of being attracted in. This is the power of a book, is that it attracts folks in. I'm curious, Cornelia, when you were getting started on your book, did you have a particular success metric you were going to pay attention to, like numbers of books sold, reviews, being booked to speak, hitting number 1? Like, what were some of the things that you thought were important at the beginning of that journey, and what sort of changed your thinking over time?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think I really started quite naive because actually I never ever wanted to write a book at all. But all of a sudden some people showed up and said, when I spoke about my work, and they just said, you should write a book about it. And then I thought, oh yeah, maybe I should write a book about it. And then I was kind of led in this direction. It was not a plan at all. And then I had to overcome all these blockades. And then all of a sudden it kind of really flew. It was in my head, and I just had to sit down and write it down. So I wrote it like in 16 weeks, every week 1 chapter. But as you're saying, writing a book is one thing, right? Because this is really a journey for yourself. But then all of a sudden I realized, but of course I don't want to, people reading it. And then, the next panic came, and I really kind of chickened out and said, no, I don't want to publish it, right? Because, there's so many personal stories and all, there's my heart, blood and everything in there. I can't publish it. What will other people think of me? So there was like the next fears I had to overcome. And I think, in a way, it's really the whole process is a journey. And then, of course, I got all these people that supported me. You came into my life, and then you came with your ideas about what you can do to make it more public, right? Because in a way, you want to reach as many people as possible, and you, lined out what are the possibilities and what I could do, and it was not that easy. But I'm very grateful I went down this road, and then, like, when I published, I thought, now I really want to be number 1, right, on Amazon.com, and this was, and it came true, and that was so it made me really kind of, and I don't know how the others feel, would be very interesting, because when I reached this goal and we celebrated it, and then I was in the evening sitting on the bed with my daughter, and she said, "Mom, I'm so proud of you," and I couldn't feel it. And then there was still so much pressure and everything, and I worked on it energetically, and all of a sudden I could really feel it. So it's a continuous process, and I think your book is always connected with you, and you always learn with it and from it.
Wow, I think so many people listening can relate to that journey of the process of writing a book and then realizing either A, you really want people to read it, or B, oh gosh, people are going to read it. I think both those reactions happen a lot. Stephanie, when you're looking at the success metrics for book 1 and book 2, did anything change about what you're hoping for? Were you more focused on reviews or sales or reach, or did something shift, or was the approach more or less the same for both of them?
It did shift. The first book was about getting a message out there and hoping, which hope is not a plan nor a course of action, hoping people would read it. I didn't have a plan. I worked with a publisher. I wrote it quickly. It got out there. And like Cornelia, it was like, oh, people are going to read this. And it was the fear of judgment, because I opened the kimono on a lot of things. And yet it was, we can be at peace no matter what situation we're living in. And then with the second book, it was, no matter where we are, healing is possible. And I've stepped more deeply into my one-on-one work with clients, as well as speaking. So the second edition of The Impact of Silence is more about speaking and the healing work that I do, and showing people that it is possible. There is no story that can't be healed.
It's really interesting, because when I was designing the Kindle cross promotion campaign, which is how the 4 of us all sort of connected today, I use the term nonfiction, much like Ali was describing, like, oh, these are for nonfiction. Then I was like, oh, it's for business authors, So I was like trying to narrow it down, because nonfiction also includes travel and memoir. But then I started to realize that it's more complicated. It's books that were written to grow a business as a speaker or a coach, consultant, healer, etc. And so where a memoir wouldn't fit, a narrative nonfiction does. And I feel like your book, Stephanie, is a good example of, it's not just a story, which in itself can be very powerful for people to read and for you to write, but also there's the takeaways. There's the fact that you offer some kind of next step for the reader and can continue helping them on that journey. And so I kind of grew in my understanding of kind of the range of books that I knew I wanted to serve, that author community, and also the experts I wanted to attract who supported those kinds of entrepreneurial authors. And Ali, these are the people that you and Bridget are very much focused on. How have you been able to guide folks in setting some goals around success? Because you and I know, and Bridget and I have had this conversation about, bestseller status being a nice to have, not the thing you spend all your time, money, and energy on. It is a feel good, and I've hit it 30 times, and I hope to do it again with my 4th book. So I'm not knocking it, but I also think there's too much weight put on it by too many authors, by often their publishers. But I know you have a different approach. So how do you help authors calibrate for the possibility of success that their book might have?
For me, it's, what's your mission and vision for the work? Like, that's really what it comes down to. If your mission, for example, is to get more people to break their own silence around trauma and speak about the hard things, right? I think your success metric is going to look very different than somebody whose success metric is hitting the Amazon bestseller list to say that you sold X number of copies in, the hour slot that the algorithm has dictated. So I think it's starting with the intrinsic, like, okay, what's in this for me? What's my internal motivation? What's the impetus for me to get out there and put words to the page? But then also, right, we all know that our books are not just for us, or at least they shouldn't be by the time it hits the publisher's desk, right? At that point, we should have figured out how this book is for others. So then what are those extrinsic things that you're hoping to do? What's the mission and vision there? If it's to create a movement, if it's to impact the one ideal reader, then I think that all has an influence on what success is going to look like. Success for some might be the daughter saying to her mother, I'm really proud of you, right? It might look like 5 different people that you have never met coming to you and saying, your book changed my life. And for others, it'll be, I sold, 15,000 copies in the first year of the release. What I know as a coach is that most of the time, my people are happier when they have more qualitative success than when they're trying to strive for a quantifiable number that's less attached to heart and more attached to sales.
Really get that last piece there. So I'm going to shift us to a piece that I feel like is a combination of heart and sales. It's the intersection, which is reviews. Because when done well, reviews are coming from the people who most want to support you and would most benefit from the book and the content that you're putting out. It's not just like friends and family writing you nice things, which honestly is the hardest route to take to get reviews because they don't really know what you do. And they don't know anyone who needs what you do, and they don't even understand the importance of review. So don't go that route for all kinds of reasons, including Amazon doesn't want you to. Instead, it's about focusing on what I call likely prospects and referral partners, people who would feel strongly impacted by your words and could possibly tell other people who would also feel strongly impacted by your words. And Cornelia, I'm going to kick this off with you because I know this was a struggle for you because you're not here in the United States, and getting reviews on Amazon has some limitations if you're in a country and if your network are in countries where they aren't using Amazon all the time. And I'm just going to name it up front for those who are listening out of particularly the United States. I would say that anyone who wants to leave a review for a book needs to have spent $50 on that Amazon account in the previous year. And that sometimes causes a problem here in the States. If, let's say, I have someone who's like, oh, I want to use my Amazon account to leave the review because it has my name, but we always buy things with my husband's account. And I'm like, well, that's not really going to work because like you haven't bought anything in your account in 9 years. It's like, we may have to just go the other route. So that does sometimes come up. But Cornelia, you collected a ton of reviews. I remember it was like 62, 64 reviews, and then really had to work to get those reviews either on Amazon or elsewhere. And in the end, it's now been a while since you and I worked together. You have 47 total ratings, and 40 of those have written reviews. The ratings are people choosing 1 through 5 stars. The thing about that is they don't have to buy it to leave stars, and they don't have to write anything to leave stars. So it's not difficult to get lots and lots of stars. So you've got a pretty good ratio of ratings and written reviews. And you still have reviews coming in even recently. And that's, I think, a lot of it's to say because you keep continuing to be part of these Kindle cross promotion campaigns. So every few months, you've got a few more reviews coming in. So your overall discoverability on Amazon is continuing to improve. Tell us a little bit about how you realized it was going to be important to focus on reviews, and how did you integrate that into your launch process?
Yes, I had really great support for my launch process. I have you, Robbie. And you remember, and I was speaking also to other authors, and most of them were saying, yeah, you definitely need a launch team, right? And I thought, where do I get them, right? So you can't go to Amazon, let's get a package of launch team members, or so they are not available there. But and this is kind of, then you have to, the first time you had to go out and create interest for your book, speak with people, and would you be interested to support my journey and get an advanced reader copy? And it was really, it was the next step. I had to get out of my comfort zone, and so as I said, it's a process. And as you said, I really had then this launch team, and they were very supportive, and I still love them. And then they agreed, yes, we love this book. We write your reviews. And then we turned out, they can't publish them, right? And so we moved on to Goodreads, and so yeah, of course there's always a workaround, but I didn't know this obstacle before, and then now I know, and I see it the same as you. It's very powerful to have this reviews, and to really make people, or encourage them to give something back when they really enjoyed your book. And that's why I'm still continuing in these campaigns, because I think it's so powerful, and I learn so much when reading other books from all these powerful authors and these ladies here. And I already read Ellie's book, and I really can only recommend it. And on the other side, then this is something that stays. And yeah, my next goal now is really having 50 reviews, and then let's see how long it takes to get them.
I mean, as you just said, it's social proof on the book sales page that will be forever there, which is wonderful. I know that you were very proud, and it was wonderful when you hit number 1. You got the screenshot, and right, like, it's a big moment, but the moment's fleeting. It goes away pretty quick. But these are a stay. And you mentioned this in passing, but I'll just want to share a little more about it. You had at least 20 people who wrote a review, sent it to you in advance. When your book was published, they were not able to put it on Amazon for any number of reasons. But you then guided some of them, posted it on Goodreads, which is also owned by Amazon, but doesn't require a purchase to leave a review. You also, I think, sent some people a LinkedIn testimonial, like, can you write a LinkedIn recommendation? And some of them were just social posts. So you had a few options for how you could bring that content, this beautiful words they'd written for you, out into the world. Allie, for your first book, I looked, because you and I were talking a moment ago about your first book, Dear Universe. I get it now. You have 42 total ratings and 32 reviews. Clearly, that's an effort, because anything over 20 means people, I mean, even to get 20 means people took intention, but to get more than that means a process. So how did you approach that for a memoir in particular? I think people listening who are doing narrative nonfiction and memoirs might be curious about that.
So for that first book, I put together a street team, is what I called it. And we came up with some funky name, and we created a private Facebook group. And at the time, I had a virtual assistant who created swipe copy and graphics. And every day for a certain period of time leading up to the book's publication date was posting instruction for that street team to go out there and promote the book and ask people to buy it and ask for them to leave a review. And then, we tracked as many of those pre-order sales as we could that people were buying directly through me, so that we could then go back to those people and remind them that we would like a review, how to do it. We provided instruction in terms of don't call Allie by her first name as if you know her personally. Try to write it from, an objective third party kind of reader who's not familiar with her. Here's an example. Keep it short, keep it sweet, lead with your best things. So we really provided some tips and parameters around that. And that was in that first initial kind of launch stage. After that, when things, inevitably slow down, because it's not the first however many weeks or months that the book first comes out. Now I'm in the habit of, anytime somebody says to me, oh, I read your book, or I just grabbed it, I usually follow up with, well, when you're done, I would love it if you went over and you left a review on Amazon, because that's usually where people are grabbing the copies of their book, even though it's available elsewhere. It's just the nature of the beast. And then I look for it. About once a month, I go and I go right to the book's page, and I find out, did anybody new leave a review? And I snatch that review. I add it to a separate Excel sheet that I keep, so that we can then go update that review elsewhere, or create a new graphic and figure out how to use that review in some new promotional effort going forward. So it was a little more strategic in the beginning, and now I've loosened up a little. There's another book, and then of course there's all my clients' books. And so it ends up being a little bit difficult to keep track of it all, in all honesty. But
I will tell you that what you just described sounds like a wonderful process, both how you got started with the street team that you activated. How many people were on the street team?
I want to say we were somewhere between 10 and 15.
Okay. So What's different, I'm going to try to define the difference between the launch team that Cornelia was describing and the street team I think that you're describing. So that Cornelia was looking for individuals who were going to each commit to writing the review and maybe doing more. You found a smaller community of people who were willing to do more, like not just write a review, but also activate their network, send content, just the street team mentality of like, we're really behind this. So it's a powerful, smaller group of people that are really just cheering you on and amplifying your message to their network for a period of time. And you're giving them the instructions and resources to do that. And Cornelia was like hunting through her network for those people who might write a review and then guiding them individually and through it. And some of them also had that street team kind of energy where they wanted to do more, which is wonderful when that happens. I think it's really interesting also the idea of the ongoing what we do. And anytime someone says something kind or nice, like in an email or a social post about something they read, I'm always like, oh my gosh, I love that. Would you mind sharing that on Amazon? And to that point you just made, Ali, about why is it Amazon that we're pushing, even though you could buy the book other places, including some brick and mortar, depending on how authors were published. Because even if they're buying it elsewhere, they check Amazon's reviews. And if people are hiring you to speak or coach, consult or something, they're going to glance at your Amazon page to see kind of, are you legit? Like, do people like your content? And if it's a crowded field, like a leadership book or something like that, then that could be a great differentiator. But it's not just about reviews. There are lots of challenges in this process, Stephanie, other than reviews. When you're setting out to do this work, where did you have to find external support in the form of an editor or a writing coach, or like how did you do a lot of this on your own? Did you need more support the first book and you kind of knew what you're doing the second book? Like, how did you find the team of people to help you bring this to life?
So the second edition was a hybrid approach. Having already written 2 books, I write. I do my blogs and write a lot of other things. So I felt pretty good with the process. It wanted an editor, and there's a friend of mine who knows my work because I've done healing sessions with her. And she knows my mission and my vision and what I'm bringing forth in the world. And so I hired her. We had a number of conversations, and I hired her to edit the book. And it needed it because the editing was on the lighter side the first time it was published 3 years ago. And I went back to the original team who had done the cover for the book. And we had a conversation with Chris at Jet Launch and said, hey, I'm updating it. There's a new subtitle. We'll need the new ISBN. For the most part, though, a lot of it is the same or similar. Mm-hmm. So we worked together to do all of those things so that I didn't have to figure it out. Could I have? Yes. Did I want to? No. It's not my zone of genius. So it was a mix. But the initial editing and rewrite was my own. And I had a very strong vision of how I wanted this book to be. Like, you could open it up as if it's an oracle and every section has a message. And so you could open it up to whatever page, and that is the thing you're meant to see.
Mm. All right. So many beautiful things. Let me underscore that piece you said about finding the right editor, because you found an editor who wasn't just an editor, but an editor who understood you and your message and what you were trying to achieve, and was also an ideal reader for your message, so that they would be more finely in tune with the writing and seeing a gap in explanation. I think one of the things that we all have to be careful of as experts is, and I found this in my second book, I had this whole process called Wake Up Your Network, which I coached people through when I met with them in, Zoom. And it turns out when I wrote it down, I had steps 1, 4, 7, and 10 written down. I didn't know that, though, because when you meet people one-on-one, you can kind of fill in the gaps. Well, I had to workshop that with a lot of early readers when I was still writing the content, and discovered that they needed 1A, 1B, 1C, 2A, 2B, 2C. Like, I couldn't skip the steps. And that's the part where getting that feedback from someone who's close enough to the content On the other hand, it can't be someone who knows too much, because then they're just in the same dangerous spot that you are about skipping steps and not being curious about the order of things and the clarity of things. But I love the idea of getting the right people on the team so that you're not having to figure it out. I had no budget for my first book. It was a scrappy experience. So I learned more than I may have chosen to, because everything in life is time or money, Stephanie. And I had less money at the time, and I had to spend more time. I remember I was telling this story to someone else. I was at a conference, and the formatter I hired from Upwork, and no shame to Upwork people, right? But like, she did not have a traditional publishing background. She was using Word to lay out my book, which was fine. But I had to search for the inside margin of a book where it folds open. I had to do all this research to figure out what size it should be for my size book. And I was at a conference looking at books that were on the exhibitor tables with a ruler app from my phone, trying to figure out anyway. Yeah. So sometimes you get into the weeds because you have to, but so much better if you can hire out and find the right people. Allie, I'm curious, what have you seen to be the most effective way for you to do not write a book out until you read this one, out into the world, like in volume, whether it's bulk sales or giveaways of the book? Like, I'm not tying this to money per se, but I'm more thinking about how do you get the book into the right people's hands? Like, what was the best mechanism that you found for that?
I'm going to be really transparent. Bridget and I are still figuring it out. This has been very different for us than from previous books either of us have written separately. Yeah. We have amazing advanced praise in this book. We have amazing endorsements, and all the people who have read the book and either given that praise or those endorsements are great ambassadors of the book, but we have not seen that necessarily translate into getting it in front of the masses, if you will. We've tapped book awards programs. And so far it's a 2 award-winning book. It's up as a finalist right now in the reference category for IBPA's book award. So we're waiting to hear if it's going to win a 3rd award. We've tried, putting ourselves out there for speaking and conferences, because we really think like, okay, if we could get onto those stages and talk about the material that's in this book and sell the book from the back, we really believe that that's the avenue. We have not struck gold yet in terms of getting people to pick us up for those conferences. And so we're right in the middle of re-strategizing. Okay, did we not hit the right conferences? Are there other avenues that we haven't thought of? So we're still figuring it out. At this point, what's been the most successful has really just been word of mouth and talking to people about it. I'm using it strategically with people who come and have a conversation with me. They're not ready to buy into a high-level program with me as a book coach or developmental editor. So I'm like, hey, I got a $50 book, or get it cheaper as an ebook. And this is your one-stop shop guide. And that usually then lets them know that I'm their person and brings them back on the other side. So it's a little slow right now, but we're figuring it out.
It's really interesting because this goes back to an earlier point you made about the purpose of a book. And I feel like this book that you have is more about educating prospective buyers about who you are and how you differentiate from other people who are talking about publishing, what kind of support you might provide, the vision you might have for authors that you work with, and makes your other packages more enticing. So it's less maybe big, splashy, Times Square billboard. I just saw someone else standing little tiny on the street with a big billboard behind them. And I'm like, I have a bunch of friends that have done that. And I'm like, does that actually move sales? I'm so curious. It's a big deal, but also, does it change anything? So I think sometimes we have these metrics that are big and splashy, but maybe don't move the needle. And for what you're doing, the word of mouth might be more about every person who liked it, asking them to gift it to 2 people. So you might want to go back to your street team approach. The problem is that you're used to other methods working from the other books you have helped, bring out into the world. happy to talk offline. But like, it seems like if you go back to like what you did with your first book about activating a few people to be kind of your ambassadors. Cornelia, have you found a method to kind of market the book in a bigger way now that the launch is done? You're not focused on individual sales quite as much, but is it attached to speaking goals for you? Like, how has that continued?
Yeah, I think it's exactly as you're saying. I figured out for me it's easier to speak about it and attract awareness. When you share stories, and so I'm speaking a lot of podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
Last year I was speaking about 36 podcasts, and but what I noticed as well is people need more and more touch points, right? Most of the time they're not they hear a story, they think nice, yeah, but they need to get see or hear from you several times to even buy a book, right? Before it was much easier. And that's what I noticed. So yeah, I'm same with Ellie. So I haven't found gold yet, but I found out that I really enjoy talking and speaking at stages and podcasts. So this is something I'm really enjoying. And on the other side, right after the book, I started also selling my program. So in a way, this is also, yeah, of course, everybody can buy the book and work with it, but we all have our blind spots, and it's also this consistency and somebody holding the space for you and keep you accountable. So in a way, and this worked out very, very well as well. Not in big groups, but it's all it's growing, and that's what I like about it. So it's a journey as well here, but I like it that it's a tool, but I'm still very, very proud of it. And people still coming back to me, and you get reviews from Ukraine and wherever, and they say, your book saved my life. And this is something, as we said at the beginning, this is, yeah, you have this number ones, whatever, but this stays with you forever, these heartwarming messages and what people really, change, and you kind of enabled it. And that's what, in a way, it's also a shift. You notice the real success is something completely different what you think at the beginning when you write a book.
Oh yeah, 100%. And the piece you just said about the book leading to this program that you have developed, that to me is real success. And it's the piece that a lot of authors, when they're starting the writing journey, don't quite have the offer figured out. And it's through the journey of writing and listening and learning from their readers, ideally working with a coach to figure out and develop that. And I this is the work that we were doing together, and I love hearing that it's happening and that it's continuing to grow for you. But speaking of success metrics, let's go over to Stephanie. I'd love to hear a success story. I guess if I would frame it as because I'm an author, like what doors have opened for you? Like, how would you finish that sentence? Because I'm an author.
It's been a lot of speaking. I've been doing a lot of podcasts. I did podcasts, and it's the social media presence. It's being consistent. But it's really the message of this. It's our energy behind the book as well, because I feel like it's never been more important for this message to be out in the world right now, for all of us to find our voice and connect with it. Even more important than it was 3 years ago when it was originally published.
Mm-hmm.
So it is getting out there and speaking and different audiences, connecting that, I came from 27 years on Wall Street, and now we're doing this, and we can do hard things.
Mm-hmm.
And being the example of that. And it's consistently being out there. It's really opened the door for speaking and stages as well.
I like the idea also that when we are in the process of writing a book, we can't see around the corner to what's next, the possibilities. And this is one of the reasons I encourage people to spend time with other authors, because you could start to see from what they create, like the possibilities and doors that open for them, like what's possible for you. And then that becomes a little more of a North Star that you wouldn't have ever thought to move towards. And so spending time with other authors, just like spending time as a speaker with other speakers, matters. If you go to bizbookpubhub.com, folks, you can actually find out about the free virtual networking events that I host every month for writers, authors, and speakers, because I think the community aspect of this, the learning from each other's journeys, is where we start to see a new path forward for our own book, particularly after the initial excitement, when it's just an every day that ends in Y, you must market your book. Well, what does that even mean? Like, and if social media feels like a lot, well, what's the other option? And so how do you get on a podcast the first time? And how do you bundle your books to sell them when you're doing a speaking opportunity? Like, there's so many things you don't know how to do and don't need to know how to do when you're starting a process of writing a book, that suddenly you have to kind of learn along the way. And it keeps it exciting. One of the things that's been wonderful about the Kindle cross promotion campaign is hearing from authors whose books are 5, 7, 9 years old and still evergreen, still very highly relevant, maybe even more so depending on the content. They, as an author, have sort of let go of talking about the book because it's something they did a long time ago, but they've met a lot of people in the meantime. And because they weren't talking about their book, these new connections don't really know they have one. And suddenly they brought it to the forefront to have this campaign push. And they're getting that same kind of feedback again from people saying, oh my gosh, your book is really helpful. Like, they're like, oh yeah, and they feel good again about this thing they worked so hard on. So I think the longevity piece is something I'm always trying to encourage people to think about. It's not a one and done, and it's also not a one way to market. As we wrap up here, I would love to hear a closing thought about what advice you would give someone who's writing a book to help them grow their business, and also how people can find you and follow your work. I'm gonna go Allie and then Cornelia. So Allie, let us know kind of a quick piece of advice. I know you've got an entire book on that, but what advice might you share? And then how can people find you and follow your work?
So there are two main, what I would say, messages that Bridget and I have in Do Not Write a Book. And so I'm just going to give you the short versions of those. The first is you are the CEO of your book. So a book is a business. Every single department that a business has, you can translate those exact same departments into the way that a book can be successfully run and maintained. And you, as the CEO of that book, means you are the visionary, the leader, the main representative. You are going to be the reason whether or not that book is successful. So you have to adopt that mindset right out of the gate. And along with that is what we call the ABCD mindset, which is approach your book with a commitment, ABC, to doing it right. So bust out all the stops, do your planning, do your outlining, go slow, be intentional, start with the end in mind, because you won't regret having done it well, but you will regret speed over quality.
Yeah, don't put out a trashy book. Better to have no book. Like, really bad idea. Allie, how can people find you and follow your work?
So best place to come and hang out with me is to check out my website, therightplacerightTime.com, and you can get all the information about the socials I'm on, the books that I've written, the people that I help. And that's WRITE in the first right and RIGHT in the second, therightplacerightTime.com.
We're going to put all the links in the show notes at bizbookpubhub.com. Cornelia, how about you?
I think it's kind of similar, but I would phrase it a little bit. What I would advise is your energy is your most valuable currency. And, it's you're putting your energy into your book. And the same as Ellie already said, if you make it right, if you're focused and you really have a positive energy also in your book, the readers and even the buyers and the people out there, they will feel the difference. It will have a different energy.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And how can people find you and follow your work?
Either on my webpage or homepage. It's Cornelia, one word, Kawann, my last name, and .com. Or I'm also very active on LinkedIn. So it's Cornelia Energy on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Awesome. We're going to put all the links, including links to your socials and your books, all at bizbookpubhub.com. And Stephanie, your advice and then how people can find you.
Writing your book is going to push buttons. Be with them, work through them, and if your buttons aren't being pushed, you might not be going deep enough. And yet, when they do push your buttons, you're in the right place. Work through it, keep going, and as was said before, keep the end vision in mind and who you're writing for.
I love it. And how can people find your work?
On my website, which is wayofthediamondwarrior.com, connect with me, links to my books, my blog, healing, all things practical and magical.
Amazing. I love it. Great tagline. And so, folks, at bizbookpubhub.com, you're going to find all the show notes from today, as well as all the other episodes that we air every Tuesday and Thursday. So much valuable content. I really can't stress enough how incredible these panels have been. Also, you'll find invitations to attend our free virtual networking events held every month, invitation to join our Kindle cross promotion campaign 3 times a year, and lots more. I mean, honestly, I can't even list it all right now. So head over to bizbookpubhub.com. Panelists, thank you so much for this incredible conversation.
Thank you, Robbie, for holding the space for us.